Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 112. I am excited to share today's topic with you because it's something near and dear to my heart, and also something that I never thought would be near and dear to my heart. And finally, something that has been incredibly effective, both for myself, but also for my consulting business owner clients like you who want to build a repeatable, sustainable, predictable pipeline of consulting clients. And so, what we're going to be diving into today is how to land speaking opportunities to grow your consulting pipeline and ultimately to grow your consulting business. So I'm excited to pull back the covers and really walk through with you what are the most effective ways to go about landing speaking opportunities and then ultimately convert those into opportunities. And whether or not you've been speaking already, this episode is going to be really important for you. If you have already been speaking as a consultant, as an expert, this will be a great episode to really just take a step back and look at the fundamentals of the way you're managing your speaking pipeline and making sure that the opportunities that you're landing are effective and will ultimately generate the results that you want, which is building your reputation as someone who solves the type of problems that you love solving for the ideal clients you love working with. And if you haven't yet implemented a speaking element to your consulting pipeline, then this episode is also for you because I'm going to walk you through those foundational elements to build out a speaking pipeline. Your pipeline could be completely generated by speaking. Your consulting pipeline could be 100% generated through speaking, as it is for so many consultants, or this might be one element of filling your pipeline and you've got several others that work really effectively for you. So it could be your entire strategy or some portion of your strategy, but it is an important element to have, whether it's all or part of your lead generation strategy. It's really important to have this component because ultimately it's what creates you being known for and sought after what you do. So, with that, we're going to dive into today's topic. Before we do, just a small personal update. I am recording this episode. In a few hours, I'm going to be heading to the airport with my third grader. I mentioned to you, I think last week, that we're going to Disneyland, just the two of us on his third grade trip. So I wanted to make sure I got this episode recorded for you before I left. So that's what I am doing this morning. And I'm so excited to create this episode for you because speaking has been such an effective tool for so many consultants. And I know it can be effective for you too, even if you don't consider yourself a speaker. I certainly never considered myself a public speaker. In fact, when I was in corporate, a lot of times I would, if I'm just being honest with you here, which I always am, I would hide behind other executives. I looked at myself as the person who made things happen, who could operationalize anything, but I really didn't like being out in front, in center stage. So every top opportunity I got, I would kind of find ways around not, oh, I have to travel for a client. I can't be at that quarterly all hands meeting. And then someone else would have to present my portion. Now looking back, I realized what a missed opportunities I had to better highlight my team, to better demonstrate to my team what they could be doing, even if they didn't consider themselves a public speaker. And so I want to share with you today, even if you don't feel like you are quote unquote a public speaker, or you think of yourself as someone who does better one-on-one or in conversations versus in a speaking opportunity, I can tell you from personal experience, both from myself as well as from so many others I've helped in the same situation, in the same mindset, that it is entirely possible for you to make a 180 and go from someone who's avoidant of personal speaking, doesn't feel like you are a public speaker, to someone who really enjoys it and uses it as a very impactful tool in your business to ensure the health of your pipeline and to also help to grow and ensure that overall health of your business. Okay, so with that, before we dive in, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you so much for those of you who took a moment and gave a rating on whatever app you're listening to this podcast on. I really appreciate so many 5-star ratings. And if you haven't yet given me a rating, or maybe you gave it in a different app, I would love a rating and truly appreciate it, especially if it's 5 stars, especially. Although I was telling my kids, I have a one-star review. I haven't been able to find it. I haven't spent a lot of time looking for it, to be honest with you, to see if they gave the reason. But I have to say, I kind of appreciate that 1-star review too. Somebody is not appreciating my podcast. And strangely enough, they were still listening and decided to give it a 1-star review. So, I was telling my kids on the way to school about this 1-star review, and they were really irritated by it. And I said, you know what? I just appreciate that people are listening and taking the time to rate and review. And if I can't handle a 1-star review occasionally, then I shouldn't be doing this. So that is the lesson I gave them for today. So anyway, I don't know why I'm digressing on this. But the point is, if you would like to go leave a rating, a 5-star rating especially, I would greatly appreciate it. And then if you're listening to me on Apple, if you would take a few more minutes and give a review, which is just typing out, a couple of sentences as to why you gave it that rating, that would be phenomenal as well, so that other people can find this podcast, other people who are creating consulting businesses and want to be successful, just like you. I would greatly appreciate it so that they can find it. And then right before we dive into today's agenda, I want to just read out a review that I truly appreciate all of them. I appreciate all of them. And this one is one of the most recent. So I thought I would read it out here today in true gratitude. Melissa, it says spot on. Melissa consistently delivers exactly what I need to hear. The topics are core to an ever-growing consulting practice with a heavy emphasis on what really matters mindset-wise. Each episode efficiently packs strategies and implementable actions. I find myself hitting the pause button at each aha, and there have been many. Again, I just want to express my gratitude. I know that took some time to write, and I truly appreciate it because I absolutely love being here every week, sharing mindset, strategies, and implementable actions, and love what I'm doing. And today, what I want to share with you is how you can leverage speaking. You don't need a podcast at all, but how you can leverage speaking in order to generate and create inbound leads for your consulting business. So that is today's focus. Let's talk about the agenda. The agenda, number one, let's just get clear on what I mean by speaking, because sometimes we have a very narrow view of it. And so I want to make sure we're on the same page about what I'm talking about today. Then we're going to talk about the 4 stages you're going to want to build when you create a speaking pipeline. So you're going to have a separate pipeline for your speaking engagements compared to your consulting opportunities. Then we're going to talk about the prerequisites for a speaking pipeline. And I'll give you a little bit of a heads up. It's only one thing. There is only one prerequisite, and you might be shocked to hear what it is. So listen for that part of the agenda. And then I will give you the steps to uncover and land speaking opportunities. So 4 very specific steps to land speaking opportunities, including some specific tactics you can use, as well as the mindset that's going to be important. That will be the difference between you successfully creating a thriving speaking pipeline and not so much. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with 3 next steps to put this into action. And you want to listen for that because there's one especially in there that I think is going to be incredibly valuable for you. Okay, so with that, let's dive into the first topic on the agenda for today. What do I mean when I'm talking about speaking opportunities? In today's context, the context for today's episode, What I mean by speaking is you giving value ahead of time to an audience of your ideal consulting buyers and or an audience of people who would connect you to your ideal consulting buyers. It's a pretty broad definition. I purposefully chose the term giving value ahead of time to an audience of your ideal consulting buyers. Speaking could take a lot of different forms, short forms, long forms, podcasts, live streams on LinkedIn. There's so many different ways that you can speak in today's society. And so, want to just open your mind to what all the different possibilities are, because a lot of times we think about sort of that traditional way of speaking, which would be presenting on some kind of a stage to a big audience in the room. And it doesn't have to be that limited anymore. It could be a podcast, it could be an online presentation, it could be a live stream, it could be a webinar. It could be on the stage at an event or anything in between. So keep that in mind as we're talking today, that it could take so many different forms. And today, the context that I'm sharing with you is landing speaking opportunities for the purpose of growing your consulting business pipeline. And so, in this context, these are unpaid speaking opportunities. Now, you could definitely get to the place where you have paid speaking opportunities that will still build your pipeline. But for most of us, and I've had a combination of paid and unpaid, but for most of us, we want to just focus on unpaid until we've got a lot of repetitions under our belts and then have a signature topic or two, and then start moving into paid speaking, which is a different topic than what we're focused on today. Today, we're talking about unpaid speaking in order to generate leads for your consulting business, leads of consulting clients. And today, also, I'm going to focus mostly on speaking to other people's audiences. So, someone else's podcast, or someone else's industry group, or someone else's company that they have accumulated your ideal audience. So we're going to be focused on speaking to other people's audiences as opposed to speaking to your own audience. So the reason why I make that distinction is if you have an audience, what I mean by that is you might have an email list with a lot of, names on it of people who have raised their hand to say, yes, I would like to hear more about what you have to say, more of your tips and resources and advice, similar to what I send you on Fridays if you're on my email list, to help provide more value and more strategies and ways of thinking about running a consulting business. So what we're talking about for you, you may not have accumulated a very large audience of people that you could market to say, come to my speaking thing, my webinar or my live stream. You may have connections on LinkedIn. Not all of them are probably your ideal clients. You might have an email list. It might be smaller than what would be an ideal size for you to get started speaking to. So, assuming those two things are happening for you, which is the case for most consultants, then that is the reason why today I'm focused on helping you speak to other people's audiences. It makes it so much easier. A pre-created audience of your ideal clients, and I'll tell you in a moment how to find those. But imagine just being in front of 50,000 potential ideal clients, and let's say a couple hundred of them attend your event. So the event is marketed to someone else's database of your ideal clients. So let's say that your ideal client is a CFO at a mid-sized company. Imagine another company who's already amassed those CFOs, and they've got 20,000 or 30,000 of them in their database. Imagine them inviting those 30,000 CFOs to your speaking webinar or whatever it is, your presentation. And even if a couple hundred attend, the quality of those individuals is really hard for you to create on your own. Certainly over time, you will be able to do that, but this is a very, very effective shortcut. So that is why today I'm focused on unpaid speaking opportunities to other people's audiences to give you the biggest bang for the amount of time you'll be spending on doing this. Okay, so that's what I mean by speaking. Now, I touched on this a moment ago, but let's dive into even further why use speaking as one of your or your only lead generation mechanism for your consulting business. Number one, that other organization will do all the marketing for you. They're going to get people there, and then you'll be able to do what you do best, which is being an expert and providing guidance and providing insights and providing ways of looking at whatever the topic is from a different perspective to your ideal clients. The other reason why speaking can be such an effective method of lead generation for your consulting business through other people's audiences is that it creates what I call a credibility transfer. So when that other organization is hosting you, there's automatically a credibility transfer. They've said, yes, we trust you. We believe that what you have is valuable. We'll put you in front of our audience. And it creates that credibility transfer from that organization over to you without you doing anything else besides just speaking for them. It's also a way for you to connect to your ideal clients and demonstrate how you can help them achieve whatever their goals are or better understand what their problems and challenges are. And that's what creates inbound leads for you. So you're not having to go out and create outbound leads, which are typically lower converting type leads. These are inbound leads where someone has raised their hand and said, yes, I think I need the type of help that I think you can provide me. Let's have a conversation. Those are much warmer. They are much more likely to lead to an actual opportunity and to close. The other thing that speaking can do for you is create both a short term, people raising their hand immediately and saying, yes, I need your help. So you can see a very quick return when you're out there speaking to other people's audiences. And then it also creates name recognition. And when done right, and I'll share with you next week on next week's episode how to convert speaking opportunities into potential consulting buyers. When you do it right, then they will know where to find you when the time is right, if it's not right now. Speaking can create a very healthy pipeline for you, both for the short term and also over the longer term, for a more self-filling pipeline, let's call it. So in short, when you leverage a speaking method as part or all of your lead generation, you'll see as we're talking today how scalable it is, how repeatable it is, and truly what a low barrier of entry it has. So that is why I highly encourage you through today's episode to implement this in your business if you haven't already, or to just go back and review the fundamentals if you've already been speaking and it's not creating the type of results that you're looking for, or that it could create even better results if it is creating results for you, if you are creating pipeline through speaking. Okay, my friends. So now let's talk about the 4 stages of your speaking pipeline. So again, you've got a consulting pipeline, a pipeline of potential buyers and potential engagements. That's one pipeline in your business. If you leverage team members to execute on delivery, you might also have a pipeline of potential subcontractors or potential employees if you're bringing on other resources to augment on a delivery side. Then another type of pipeline you want to be having is your speaking pipeline. So this is just like a pipeline of consulting engagement opportunities, but it's specific to you landing speaking engagements. You're going to want to treat it in the same way, where you're prospecting for speaking, you're qualifying speaking, you're proposing speaking, and then you've got them ultimately on your calendar when you've landed them. So that is what you're going to want to do to manage this process, to create speaking and ultimately land speaking opportunities for yourself. Going to want to create a pipeline. Typically, a pipeline of this nature would have 4 stages. Number 1, speaking opportunities you want to explore or pursue. So this is prospecting. This is you going out and thinking about all of the different types of organizations and forums and groups of people where your ideal clients are attending or listening, and proactively identifying those and then starting to pursue them. That's prospecting. The second stage of your speaking pipeline is keeping track of anyone who's expressed interest or who's, basically responded to you reaching out to them. And I'm going to dive into the detail here in a minute of what that looks like for you to move someone from I'm interested in speaking to their audience to getting them to start talking with you about what that would look like. So any speaking opportunity that's expressed interest is, I would put it in a qualifying stage. Once you're really down in the details of that speaking opportunity, we would call that in conversation or in process. And then finally, that fourth stage is the speaking opportunities on your calendar. A great goal for you to create the health of your short-term pipeline, your short-term consulting opportunity pipeline. So this is our pipeline of business. A great goal is to try to get one speaking engagement on your calendar per month. That creates a thriving pipeline of consulting business. And again, be sure to listen next week because I'm going to talk about after you've landed these speaking engagements, after you've landed these speaking opportunities, how to convert when you're delivering on that speaking engagement, how to convert that audience into opportunities for you, into consulting buyers for you. All right. So we've gone over what do I mean by speaking. So think of it in a much more broad sense than you might have been thinking about it. Think about why speaking is an important element of your lead generation as an independent consultant. We've talked about the fourth stage, creating a pipeline and why it's important to create a very specific speaking pipeline for yourself with the goal of generating one speaking gig, we'll call it, unpaid gig per month, and how to manage through that from prospecting to qualifying to in process to on the calendar. So that's at a very high level, what the speaking pipeline looks like. Now let's start drilling into some more details about what it means and how you can move someone from a company or an organization from, wouldn't it be amazing to speak at that organization, to an organization and a speaking gig that's on your calendar. As we're drilling into this level of detail, let's start with the prerequisites, because this is trips up so many of us. So many of us who are independent consultants who know that speaking can be a very impactful way to generate a pipeline of consulting buyers. But oftentimes I find that we don't move forward. We don't move forward because we get stuck in our own head. So the prerequisites, here are what they are not. You do not need a website. You do not need a speaker's bio. You do not need a prepared presentation. You don't even need a list of topics that you would present on. You need only one thing. To get started creating a speaking pipeline for yourself, all you need to know is what type of client you want to attract. That's it. What type of consulting client do you want to attract? That is it. Do you want to attract the CFO at a mid-size manufacturing type company? Do you want to attract a COO at Fortune 100 or Fortune 1000 financial services companies? Who do you want to attract? Do you want to attract a director of engineering that are in mid-sized software companies? Think about what type of client you ultimately want to attract. That is it. Now, I know that sounds very loose. And so you're probably thinking that cannot be it. Melissa is wrong. This is not true. I definitely need a website and a prepared presentation. Now, what I'm saying to you is, in order to land speaking opportunities, you don't need anything but one simple answer, which is, what type of client do I want to attract? Once we land the speaking opportunities, then we'll start putting some things into place, like a presentation, all right? But a lot of times we spend so much time getting ready, thinking we need all these, very formalized, buttoned down things, when in fact, that's not the case. Let's be nimble. You're running a business of one or a business of one plus some support, some subcontractors, if that's your model. You're running a very lean, nimble business, and you can build the airplane when it's flying. And I'm going to tell you how to do that in a way that doesn't get you into trouble, in a way where you don't get over the tips of your skis, as we say in Colorado. Okay. So those are the prerequisites. That's it. Just what type of a client do you want to attract? Now I'm going to walk you through some very specific steps on how you find and land those speaking opportunities. So how do we fill the pipeline? Drilling into another level of detail, because this is the most common question I get, even for the most seasoned consultants. For some reason, it feels very confusing for many of us to think about, how do I go about finding the people that I want to talk to? It feels confusing for so many of us, even when you've been doing this for a long time, or even when you've got 20 years of experience in corporate. For the reason why is because it is a scary thing to think about putting yourself out there in something new. And so, of course, our brain just creates confusion in order to keep us from doing it. So that's why. But today I'm going to take the mystery out of it so you don't have to worry about being confused or how this will work for you. So the first thing to fill your pipeline is you want to ask yourself, because you already know the answer to that prerequisite, who are the types of people that I want to attract, to a speaking event, a speaking situation. The first thing you're going to do to fill your pipeline is to ask yourself, who has already accumulated my ideal audience? Just sit down and brainstorm, who could it be? For some of us, it's a very easy answer. For me, there are multiple marketplaces out there who have accumulated independent consultants. And when I speak to those marketplaces, which a lot of times it's really challenging to be successful at landing consulting clients, high paying consulting clients, repeatedly through a marketplace. So when I speak to consultants who want to grow their businesses, it's an ideal audience because you're looking for solutions to the types of problems that I help solve through coaching. So for you, ask yourself, who has already accumulated my audience? I'll give you some more examples from clients. So these are my independent consultant clients. They've found speaking opportunities through things like industry associations, through what I'll call adjacent vendors. So there may be a software vendor who serves your ideal audience, who isn't Oracle, someone who's smaller, like a mid-sized software company, who works with the same consulting buyer that you do, that you want to work with. So in the example I've been using today, they might work with the COO or the CFO of a mid-sized company. They've already got that relationship. They've already got that COO or CFO on their email list. That COO or CFO is already consuming content that organization is creating. So it's perfect for you to go in and complement what they're already doing. So think about what other vendors are out there, what other vendors serve my ideal consulting buyer. That's a great way to find a pre-existing audience. Podcasts are other great ways where other people have already accumulated your ideal consulting buyer in their audience. It's a pre-existing audience for you. Also, calls for speakers. So you will go out to an event that happens, that most of the ideal consulting buyers that you would want to be talking to go to every year or every quarter. Go look at their website and look at the calls for speakers. Figure out who has already accumulated your audience that will create a pre-existing group of people, of your consulting buyers, that you can then get in front of so easily, because some other organization has already accumulated them and will be inviting them for them to come listen to you. It's all going to be set up for you. You've just got to figure out and get creative about answering that question. Who has already accumulated my ideal audience? Answer that question and then put all of those organizations, don't prejudge them. Don't prejudge whether they'll be receptive. Don't prejudge whether they'll be effective in lead generation for you or not. Just brainstorm all the different organizations that have already accumulated your audience. And that's what goes into that prospecting stage of your pipeline. To encapsulate this, the mindset you want to be leveraging for this particular step is it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to prejudge any type of organization that I think has accumulated my ideal consulting buyer. I'm going to put all of them on my list and figure out then how to triage that. If you prejudge and think about, well, they won't want me or they're too big to want me. I was joking about Oracle earlier, but you may have a lot of value to augment their audience. Obviously, they have a very wide ranging audience. We're talking about some segment of their audience in that case, right? Do not judge whether they would be an effective audience for you and result in leads. Like, where is this going to go? Is this worth my time? Do not do that. And also, do not judge whether they would be receptive to you. Right now, we're creating, if you think about a funnel, we're creating something that's very wide at the top. Then the next step, as you start pursuing them. So this is the second stage of the process where you're qualifying them. You might be reaching out to them. You might be asking someone you know to connect you to get an introduction. You want to get in front of them. You want to figure out, how can I get in front of them? So a great way to do that is, like I said, find someone who maybe is a past employee there or who has a relationship with someone in their marketing organization. Usually it's marketing that you would want to be connecting to, in a mid to larger size organization. If it's a smaller organization, then it could be anyone. But you want to get in front of them. You want to help them know you. You want them to know that you've got something valuable to add that they don't need any budget for. It's going to make their life easier. So figure out a creative way to get in front of them, just like you probably are finding creative ways to get in front of your consulting buyers. It's the same type of thing. Get an introduction by someone that mutually you know. Get an introduction by another vendor or a past employee that you know. And if you don't know any of those, or it feels like a really large organization to get in front of, then reach out, do a cold reach out to them. One of the craziest stories that I've had is, I thought to myself, where are consultants accumulated who has a pre-existing audience? And one of my answers was Accenture. Accenture alumni, I'm sure, have independent consultants in that audience. A lot of them are probably employees of other organizations, but there has to be some subset that are independent consultants. And I'm an alumni of Accenture. So I decided, well, I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a shot. I sent an email to whatever the email is for their alumni, questions for alumni. I mean, that was it. It was literally a simple customer service email. And I said, I am looking for the organization that books speakers. I noticed you have a webinar every month. Can you connect me to that organization who books speakers? I thought it would go nowhere. I thought it was a complete waste of time, but I wanted to do it anyway. Let's see what happens. And I did that. And within 2 days, I was connected to the right department, essentially. It basically evolved over email very simply. They asked me what ideas I had, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how to do this in a second. I gave them 3 or 4 ideas about what the topics could be that were a great alignment for the alumni of Accenture, which are hundreds of thousands and across the globe. That would be a great topic to benefit Accenture because I was benefiting their alumni. And that would be relevant to people, the right potential clients for me would be interested in knowing more and figuring out what I do and creating a pipeline from that, which I did. That was it. A simple email to customer service. So get creative, be persistent. It doesn't mean that you're reaching out every week to create a speaking pipeline, but if your first attempt doesn't work, then figure out another way and continuously work on that prospecting stage of your pipeline until it becomes an opportunity. So the mindset that you want to be leveraging for the second step, which is get in front of them. So the first step was, who has already accumulated my ideal audience? The second step is get in front of them. Again, these are steps to fill your pipeline and push opportunity through your pipeline. The mindset that's important to get in front of them is that this could be a no-brainer once I find the right person. That's it. We're just trying to find the right person, and it could be a no-brainer for them once we get connected. Use your mindset for yourself instead of your mindset against yourself, trying to talk yourself out of things. Okay, the third thing you want to be doing is, again, to fuel that pipeline, is to identify a value gap that you could fill for that specific audience. So look and see, have they had past external speakers and writers? That's a great sign. If everything is done internally, then it's probably not the best one to try to get in front of. But when they do have external speakers and writers, think about what gap you might be filling, a value gap you might be filling. What types of topics haven't yet been covered, or what types of topics have been covered, but you have a different angle for it. Start thinking about what kind of value you could be providing, what gaps you could be filling for that particular audience. And your mindset here is, how can I make their life easier? How could I make the person responsible for maintaining this audience, cultivating this audience? How could I make their life easier? The mindset is not, what could I get from this? The mindset is, how can I make their life easier? How can I add value to their audience, which is a great reflection upon them, the company or the organization who has cultivated the audience. The other mindset is, it's possible I can be valuable to their audience. They've been looking for someone like me. I'm going to make it easy to find me. So that is the process by which you want to start prepping for the meeting that you've booked with this particular, whoever owns the audience and is interested in talking about what you might be able to provide for them. And create for yourself, identify that value gap. And then the last thing you're going to want to do is figure out, what are the speaking solutions that you're going to propose. Come up with 3 or 4 ideas that you have that fill those gaps, or cover a topic that's already been covered from a different perspective. And go on to a meeting with those individuals who are managing the audience with those suggestions. I've been thinking about this, and here's what I've noticed about your content, and here's where I think there might be something really valuable to add. But I'm also open to your suggestions. Show them that you've done the research. Show them that you care about providing value to their audience. Show them that you will be a good representative and you're trustworthy to be putting in front of their audience. Now, some of them will go right away. Like I said, I basically handled all of that Accenture example I just gave you over email. I don't even think we met until it was time to do like a tech dry run. That's pretty impressive for Accenture to agree to bring someone in front of their alumni without ever having met that person. Now, other times, and that happened for so many other clients too, where your reputation precedes itself when you're booking a speaking engagement. Then there may be other times where you need to build some direct trust with them. So then in that case where they might be hesitant or skeptical, you could do things like recommending that you speak to a smaller subset of their community, or do writing first, like blogging first, before they bring you in for more of a live speaking type engagement. So think about, how are you going to effectively propose those speaking solutions to that organization who's already accumulated your ideal audience? And finally, the mindset you want to be bringing to the table as you're proposing your speaking solution is that I'm making it easy for them to say yes. And also, the mindset is so important. I am a speaker, not I'm becoming a speaker, or I hope I can do a good job at speaking. I am a speaker. I am making this easy for them to say yes. Do you see the difference in that mindset versus going in hoping that they believe in you? You believe in you first. So that is the next layer of detail for you, some very tangible and real life examples of how you're going to move from figuring out who has already accumulated your audience so you can fill that initial list of who you want to target, and then move them through the process, your pipeline process, to ultimately book speaking engagements with a goal of doing that once a month, a goal of landing and speaking once a month. All right. It may take you a lot more volume in the beginning because you're just getting up and running. But over time, I can assure you, it will be so much easier to book at least one speaking engagement a month once you've been cultivating these relationships with those organizations who have already amassed your ideal audience. Okay, my friend, let's talk about next week just briefly, and then I'll give you those 3 next steps to put this into action. The first is we've talked today about how do you land these speaking gigs as a method of filling your consulting buyer pipeline. Now what? We want to make sure that once you've landed these speaking gigs, that you convert them into consulting opportunities. And that's what next week's episode will be all dedicated to. So be sure to come back for that one next week. And finally, as we wrap up here today, I want to share with you the 3 next steps to put what we were talking about today into action. Number 1, start your speaking pipeline. I just gave you all the basics of how to do this and all the critical foundational elements to do this. And I've also told you that there's a very simple prerequisite. There's no excuse to not get started on this. So I'm imploring you to get going with it. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is I wrote an article on my website about the best CRMs for consultants. So this is the hidden gem that I referenced early in the episode. Go check that article out. It's the best CRMs for consultants. It gives you just a list of very simple customer relationship management tools that you can put in place. If you are at the place right now where you're not really tracking anything, it can be really valuable just to implement a really simple CRM, which that's what is given to you in that article, and will help you to keep track of this, not only your consulting buyer pipeline, but also your pipeline for speaking. And finally, if you need help with creating an effective lead generating, repeatable, sustainable pipeline through speaking or through any other means, and want help growing your consulting business, reach out. You can book a call with me at consultmelissa.com. We'll talk about coaching and whether or not that's a good fit for you. And I look forward to meeting you. All right. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.